Regardless of where you live, Amazon probably plays a role in your life. For many of us, Amazon has become the go-to place when we need something and want it delivered, or when it's something we can't find locally. Or maybe we're looking for product reviews. For most retailers, more often than not, it's the 800-ton gorilla that's either eaten your business or is about to. We all know that Amazon has the benefits of scale, a multifaceted business model that powers further growth, investors who aren't pressuring it on profits, and seemingly bottomless pockets that allow it tremendous freedom to innovate as well as grow its infrastructure. But unlikely as it might seem, Amazon has its failures too. There are sectors that even Amazon can't crack. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome to A Seat at the Table, where each week I sit down with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, educators, and innovators who share their insights, expertise, and experience. This week, Dr. Robin Gaster will be discussing his new book, Behemoth, Amazon Rising, Power and Seduction in the Age of Amazon. This book is a must-read for anyone who wants a sharp and well-researched view of Amazon's true strengths and weaknesses, as well as insights into how brands need to rethink the way they approach their customers if they want to succeed in a world that is basically dominated by Amazon. Although Behemoth Amazon Rising is packed with facts, statistics, and technological explanations, it's a surprisingly fast and engaging read. Dr. Gaster is a visiting scholar at George Washington University Institute for Public Policy and the President of Incumetrics, Inc., a data and program evaluation consultancy that serves clients seeking to understand the intersection of technology, innovation, economics, and politics. His clients include think tanks like National Academies, Brookings, and the Berkeley Roundtable on the International Economy, U.S. government agencies including Navy, SBA, and NIST, foreign governments, that would be Sweden and Finland, large companies like Houghton Mifflin and Deloitte, and many more. In this episode, Dr. Gaster will be explaining where Amazon's real strengths lay, why being the world's biggest store actually works against Amazon, and strategic opportunities for everyone who's not Amazon. Before we get started, if you're looking to develop collections that will be bestsellers both online and in stores, then Spin Expo is the fair for you. It's the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. It's also the top resource for precise trend information that cannot be found anywhere else. To learn more, go to spinexpo.com. That's spinexpo.com. You can also find a link in the show notes. I'm also pleased to announce that A Seat at the Table now has its own website where you can find the show notes, access to all the podcast episodes, and other useful information. You can find it at www.seat.fm. That's www.seat.fm. FM because it's a podcast. Now, let's sit down with Dr. Gaster and find out everything we didn't know about Amazon. Dr. Gaster, thank you so much for joining us today on A Seat at the Table. Amazon's dominance of e-commerce, cloud services, and so many other sectors has made it an often discussed, debated, and dissected topic in both business and academic circles. Your new book, Behemoth, Amazon Rising, presents a very clear history of how Amazon got to where it is today and where the future for Amazon might be. There's so much to unpack in Behemoth, so perhaps we can focus on specific topics such as Amazon's private label business, future scenarios, and where there are opportunities for everyone else. In other words, everyone who isn't Amazon.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think most of our listeners understand how big Amazon is. You brought up an interesting fact that actually Amazon accounts for only 5% of U.S. retail sales. Now, I don't think many people would have thought that. And that is, as of 2019, online sales in the U.S. were still only 11% of total retail sales, which seems incredible because, again, the perception, right, is that it's taken over the world. So, granted, e-commerce share of total retail is continuing to grow, but it's still, as you point out, a sliver of total retail sales. So I'm wondering, if this is the case, why are retailers, other than books, right, which as you point out is a very unique business model, claiming that the reason they're failing is because of what they refer to as the Amazon effect? In other words, Amazon's grabbed all the market.
So I think from the retailer's perspective, for any retailer, you sell a range of goods, and some of them are profitable, and some of them are marginal, and some of them probably lose you money. So Amazon doesn't have to take all of the market for the retailers to feel tremendous impact. E-commerce just has to take the best part of the market, right? So if that 10% or 11% or now 15% or maybe 18% after the pandemic, if that is your best product, your most profitable area, then you can be in real trouble even if you only lose 10% of your market. And I think that is what has happened because obviously Amazon and other e-tailers aim at the most profitable segments. They don't always succeed, as we can talk about later. But that's, the problem is not that Amazon and e-commerce is eating all of the retail market. It's just eating the best bits.
They've got the dessert.
Yeah, that's right. They started with dessert and they're working their way back.
Yeah. I think another thing that you pointed out, which I thought was very interesting, is the long tail effect, that Amazon's able to include more obscure inventory, such as niche products that aren't selling in big volume, and that actually they're able to gain quite a bit of profit from that. And I'm wondering, what other advantages you might see that Amazon is getting from this?
Well, there are both pluses and minuses to having a huge inventory, and Amazon's inventory is unbelievable. There are two pieces to it. There's the piece that Amazon itself owns and operates, right?
Right.
Like any other retail store. And then there's the marketplace, the platform. So we don't know, because Amazon won't tell us, how many actual products Amazon itself sells. Estimates suggest that in 2016 it was 12 million different items.
Really?
Probably that's doubled, maybe more than doubled, because Amazon has more than doubled in size in that time. So if you think about it, Amazon is probably trying to manage 20 million retail supply chains.
Wow.
Now, to put it in perspective, a big Walmart store carries 100,000. Okay, and Amazon is managing 20 million. And then beyond Amazon, there is the marketplace where anybody can come onto Amazon and sell anything.
Right.
More or less. And that 450 million items. So Amazon's catalog is essentially unlimited. It is the everything store. It absolutely is the everything store. So this is tremendously attractive. You and I know that when we go onto Amazon looking for that left-handed grip wrench that is exactly 7 inches long, we can find it.
Right.
If it exists, it's there. We can't find Nike. We can get back to that in a bit. But so everything is there. But everything comes at a price to Amazon too, right? Managing 12 million or 20 million different items is incredibly difficult.
Right.
And Amazon has as necessarily automated this, right? There's no way that humans could do this. They'd have to hire millions of humans to do it. So
right.
This is not possible. So they've automated. Well, what does this mean? It means that Amazon in the e-retail world can be seen as a great white whale. It's enormous. It's powerful. It's huge, but it's surrounded by millions of sharks.
Right.
Those millions of sellers on the marketplace know one thing. They know their particular business better than Amazon does. Right? And I think this explains why Amazon loses so much money in its retail business. It's just expanded and expanded and expanded. And if it started in the most profitable areas, gradually it is expanding into less and less profitable areas. And at the same time, it's changed its own environment by inviting all the marketplace sellers in, and in particular, opening the door to Chinese manufacturers. The people used to sell to Amazon now sell direct to the customer.
Right.
Amazon has disintermediated itself, which is a strange thing because after all, that's what Amazon has done to so many other people.
Right.
All those bricks and mortar, the borders of this world sort of the rusting hulks of previous businesses on the side of the road that Amazon crushed. Well, Amazon's facing the same problem.
Interesting. How do you think that might play out for them?
I think eventually they're going to do two things. One is they are continuing to transition their retail business onto the platform, into the marketplace. I think eventually they would love to have marketplace be 80% or 90% of their retail business instead of the 60 it is now. So one way to get rid of this is to actually stop being stop being such a big retailer. Look, retail is a risky business. You have to buy stuff, you have to hope that it's the right stuff, and you have to sell it. The platform is not risky.
Right, exactly.
It takes its 15% and it takes its advertising money, and it's pretty happy. It's about 23% of gross revenues off the top, no risk. So that's one thing it can do. The other thing it can do is to take a hard look at its own retail business and say, look, this 8 million SKUs are losing money for us. We don't need to be in that business. We're big enough now in other places. I think Amazon has a sort of internal, it would be hard to do that, right? I mean, they came up in retail. This notion of being the everything store is deeply embedded. But the reality is they don't need that. And I think they'll recognize that. It would not be hard for them to fix that big pool of red ink. Wouldn't be hard.
So in other words, you're saying that the way forward for them would be to not own inventory, but simply be a marketplace.
Yeah, I think so. I have to say that's the logical outcome. What they're doing right now is not that.
Right. It seems so.
There is no sign that there's some early warning signs. They have tried about a year ago to start moving their vendors onto the marketplace, away from direct sales to Amazon. And I imagine that is continuing. And there are benefits to vendors too. They get control.
Right.
They get control of pricing. They get control of marketing and distribution. It's not clear that being an Amazon vendor is so much fun these days. Partly
probably
because
not.
Amazon is squeezing them. It's losing a lot of money. It's undoubtedly squeezing its vendors. Vendors may be saying, well, we'd rather be on the marketplace. And there are some who have tried and not been allowed to do that.
Oh, interesting. I think that brings us to another point that you brought up, which is the fact that Amazon made a pretty big foray into private label. And you point out that in most categories it has not been massively successful, which is sort of interesting because they would have the clout, right, with suppliers to be able to get competitive prices. They certainly have the access to consumers, so they have the channels of distribution, they have the logistics, they have everything. You would think that it would be the opposite, but in fact, as you point out, most of their private label has not performed as well as hoped for. What do you see happening?
Most of their private label business is at the low end. By far their biggest and most successful private label business is in batteries, which is a real commodity product. People buy it on price. They assume that Amazon is sufficiently good. But their problem is that they have a huge marketplace that is driven by price, and it is filled with competitors who are selling direct to the same market, right? So let's say Amazon wants to do a private label like it does in women's clothing, and it has its Lark and Row private label brand. Well, there are two things to consider here. First is Lark and Row as a brand has no clout. Nobody goes onto marketplace to look for that Amazon brand. They don't even go looking for Amazon basics.
Right.
So people go there to look for batteries. So the brand has no power. So they've not managed to create anything like the Costco brands or the Walmart brands. These brands are just kind of a placeholder for the fact that customers want to see that it comes from somebody.
Right.
They don't have any clout at all. And we can talk about Amazon exclusive brands in a bit. But so they have a double problem. Their brands don't really get them much. in terms of sales or margin. And the platform is filled with competitors selling cheap goods. So they're constantly struggling against the competition. I mean, the reality is just that them after 8, 9, 10 years, their private labels, according to Amazon, are about 1% of sales.
Oh, that's not
And,
much.
Well, over at Walmart, it's 30%.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if I was being particularly sort of paranoid and inside the beltway kind of guy, I would say that Amazon's private labels are there as bait for regulators to keep them away from more important things. While everybody is up in arms about Amazon's terrible, private label business pushing out vendors, Amazon can defend that and work on it and bring Walmart in to help them defend it because it really matters to Walmart.
Right, right.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter at all to Amazon. If it had to dump its entire private label business, be delighted if it meant that Walmart had to do the same.
It's interesting that you point that out because I don't think many people have seen it that way.
No, they see the fact that that Amazon does have a private label business, and they do cause damage to individual sellers. Jason Boyce has done a book and a series of articles, and he did a launch event with me where he explained how Amazon came for his business very explicitly. It wasn't like an accident.
Right.
They went to suppliers and tried to take the business away from him. And
wow.
So Amazon does a lot of, it's not shady, it's just
aggressive.
Yeah, it's hyper aggressive. Amazon pushes the boundaries wherever they can push them, and they, that's what they do. That's their approach.
Right. Well, I think you would pointed out Jeff Bezos' famous quote saying that your margin is his opportunity. So, I think that sums it up very well.
Well, and every functional business has a margin.
Right. Yeah, of course.
It's a statement of intent that there are no, you think about other big businesses, even digital businesses like Facebook and Google. I mean, they stay in their lane. They do little bits here and there. They try and expand it. They buy a parallel business or an adjacent business. Amazon doesn't care about that at all. They want to get into satellites.
Yeah,
right? And health,
that's true.
And finance. The ambition is endless.
Right, right. Well, you had pointed out in the book, and I think you did a great job of really breaking down how they built step by step the massive and super efficient logistics maybe / AI. I don't know if AI is part of logistics really, or if it's a separate area that just powers logistics.
Exactly.
But regardless of how you look at it, you pointed out very articulately and very, very clearly how they've built this unbelievable sort of hard to compete with infrastructure that could be, as you said, a platform for just about anything that you wanted to roll out en masse. Do you think that that's part of what makes it easy for them to slide into many of these other service businesses? Like you said, healthcare being one of them, and probably insurance or banking. You also, I think, pointed to those in the book. So
healthcare is really interesting because we can't yet, it's like we're peering through the fog to see what Amazon is really up to. There are a few pieces of infrastructure poking through that we can see, but I think there's a lot going on under the surface that is not apparent. So if you think about it, what do we know? We know Amazon bought PillPack and has launched Amazon Pharmacy. Both of those are delivery-based businesses, so it's obvious delivery really helps. But they've also launched something called Amazon Care, which is their own primary care system for their own 1.2 million employees.
Wow.
This is sort of the follow-on from the Haven project, which you may have heard of, that they did with Buffett and Citibank. And the thing, quote, collapsed a few months ago. But what really happened was that Amazon was actually moving and the rest of them were thinking about it. Amazon is building this primary care system. It's going to include clinics in major locations like warehouses. A lot of it will be telehealth. So what is this? This is the same model that they used with AWS, the internet services.
Right.
You build something for yourself, and then you sell it to everyone else.
Right.
Building is a turnkey primary care system that they can sell to other big employers and to the federal government possibly, right? So once
How interesting.
so that's the second big piece. And the third big piece is Alexa, because I am sure that Alexa will be the gateway for in-home health and wellness and the connection between your home and yourself and medical services.
Wow.
5 years from now, if you sprain your knee, you will ask Alexa what you should do. Rather than pick out the phone and try to find an advice nurse, I mean, it's already impossible to talk to a doctor, right? That's completely impossible. You can't pick up the phone and talk to a doctor, not unless you're having a heart attack. And even then, probably not. They tell you to call 911. So, right? So instead, Alexa is there. Alexa will get better and better and better at asking and managing subcritical healthcare, and in particular, helping to manage chronic disease.
Wow.
Is where all the money is, right? That's where
Yes, of course.
There's going to be, I mean, right now you can do an EKG in your home using attachments to a phone. You can do diabetes management. You can do sleep and sleep apnea treatments and tracking. This diagnostic part is clearly moving into the home, and Alexa is positioned to be the gateway. And that's why Alexa is so much more important than Google's Assistant and Siri, because they haven't seen this.
Right, right. And then, as you pointed out, Amazon recently launched Halo, right? The wristband that also ties in as a wearable.
Exactly. It's their extension of all these diagnostic tools. And in a certain sense, what you can see is, just like there was a sort of virtuous circle to bring in customers on the retail side. So you have low prices, so that brings customers, that brings sellers. The logistics reduces the cost, so now you can reduce the prices and the thing continues to spiral upwards, right? Well, in home, what you can see is around Alexa, the same thing is starting to happen. Now you have Ring. Ring is going to take care of your security. Right. But how's it going to do that? It's going to do that by encouraging you to use Alexa all the time. How does the entertainment piece work? Well, you ask Alexa for music or news or a shopping list. Though shopping is it's a terrible app for shopping. It doesn't really work unless you want to call Alexa and say, "Look, just have Amazon send me this one thing."
Right.
That'll work. So you can see. What's happening is we are being trained. I mean, I know this sounds paranoid, but we're being trained to see Alexa as the information and services hub inside the home.
Wow.
And healthcare will be part of that, a big part of that, because nobody is doing that. Nobody's doing it well. There's a huge opportunity there for Amazon, and they're perfectly positioned.
And healthcare is something that is suitable to start in the home.
That's right. It has to start in the home. I mean, it's best if you don't want to schlep over to the freaking clinic to get your temperature taken. It's ridiculous, right? And then for them to tell you, well, it's nothing, there are liability issues and there are lots. It's a long pathway, but you can see the path, and actually, it's pretty attractive. This is the difference between Amazon and Standard Oil. Everyone hated Standard Oil, right? That's why they broke up. It was a leech. It was a parasite on the world. But Amazon isn't like that. People use their services. They like their services.
Right.
It's a question of, and I like their services. So
me too.
It's a question of, okay, there's this very strange entity which has somehow become this behemoth, and it's getting bigger and bigger and getting into new places. Do we need to pay attention to it? And what are the implications of it for the people who are not customers, or people who are customers on one side but are affected by it as a producer on the other side? And, it's the light side and the dark side of Amazon.
Right.
It's relentless.
I guess with Amazon, I mean, as you pointed out, because the whole focus or the overriding mission of the company was to be customer obsessed, to keep the prices low as possible, even when they're running at a loss. They did many, many things that were loss making, but it created that, as you said, that super glue that kept customers there, that kept customers loyal. So as long as that philosophy is in place, the fact that they're massive isn't a problem because they're serving the consumer. I suppose the problem is if at some point down the road, management takes the fact that now they have market dominance in terms of market share and decides, well, let's start to raise prices. I don't know whether that would be something that could be problematic. What's your take on that?
I don't think the problem with Amazon is prices. Honestly, I think it's actually fairly embedded in their culture. I think Bezos. There's a quote in the book somewhere to the effect from Bezos that says there are two kinds of retailers. There are retailers that look to raise prices, and there are retailers that look to lower prices, and we are going to be the second. This isn't a sort of commitment of opportunity that they decided a low price strategy was kind of useful for now. This is in their core DNA. So I don't think that's really the problem. So
you don't think they're likely to change if, certainly Bezos has moved out of the helm and other guys are starting to come in one by one. You don't think that they would change that philosophy at any point?
Well, at any point's a long time, and it's sort of a test, isn't it, to see whether the culture that Bezos and his colleagues very deliberately created is able to survive beyond Bezos. We're not beyond Bezos, by the way. I mean, he's chairman.
He's still involved.
I think he just dumped off all the unpleasant day-to-day work of running Amazon and said, "You do it." But I'm not worried. I'm not really so worried about that. I'm worried about how they see the world. When Amazon was a tiny bookstore, they could afford to focus on themselves and only themselves and their customers. And it really didn't matter. And when they got bigger and they destroyed Borders, and to be fair, Barnes & Noble is just about done. Well, in a certain way, that was sort of cycle of life in retail, right? I mean, Borders and Barnes & Noble had destroyed the individual bookstores first. So, that Amazon came for them and did so by undercutting them on price and doing better by customers, well, didn't feel so bad. Now Amazon is 1.2 million people. It's going to be the biggest company in America very soon, bigger than Walmart. And they still don't care about any of the collateral damage. They just don't care. It's that mission focus on the customer. In a sense, it's sort of cult-like, right? I mean, it's saying this is the important thing, and everything we do, anything we do that supports that mission is good. Friends from inside Amazon have said that it is very much like the Jesuits or the Marines. That it's a culture where commitment really, really matters. You have to commit to the entity.
Right.
It's not like getting a job at IBM. You get a job there, you spend a few years, you comply with what they want, and you move on. Amazon is different. And so you have this obsessive focus on the customer where really collateral damage outside the company is just meaningless. It doesn't matter. It's because you are serving the greatest good by serving the customer. Now they're so big. So take retail. You brought up retail at the beginning. And the same thing could be true in healthcare. What if Amazon takes a chunk of healthcare, the most profitable, the most useful part, the part that keeps doctors' offices open, or pharmacies open? It's quite likely that pharmacies are the first target. If Amazon is successful, we are going to see CVS rusting on the side of the road just like Borders. And for each individual customer, it doesn't really mean much. For the community and the people who used to work there, I'm not comfortable having Amazon just run its steamroller over anything in its way. I feel that this is getting big enough now that we need to be paying attention. And then there is the data side. Amazon is becoming our data repository. They know so much about us, especially if we're a member there. They know what we buy, they know what we don't buy, they know what we look at. And they're also the second biggest tracker on the web after Google. So they track us across the web.
Interesting.
It's easy for Amazon to buy information files about us. I'm sure they have, existing credit and personal record files that are widely available. They're relatively cheap. I'm sure Amazon has bought all of those too. So Amazon has this, and then we get to Alexa, right? And now we get to find Amazon is tracking what we do in our home, as well as in our car through Alexa added services there. We are living in a world where Amazon knows us better than our spouse.
That's not a good thought.
It's not a good thought, partly because we don't know what they do with it.
Right. And I think it's interesting. I mean, you had pointed out, and not wanting to jump ahead too far, but you had pointed out that if Amazon were to be regulated, I think you made a very interesting point about antitrust and how it got started and why it shifted in terms of how courts are ruling on that and so forth. But I think that your suggestion that perhaps the way to regulate a company like Amazon, which has gotten that big, is to take the approach they take to utilities, and where on the one hand they're allowed to be a monopoly because it works better as a monopoly, but on the other hand you have to have that total transparency at a level that most businesses, certainly in the U.S., don't have to have. So I think that's a very interesting point.
We have no privacy, and the notion that we can get privacy through regulation, I think, is unfortunately obviously failing. I don't know about you, but when I get those pop-ups about privacy and cookies and all that stuff, do I spend any time on them? No, I don't. I don't think anybody does. It's just another intrusive annoyance. So for the big companies, we need to know what they're up to. They're too big.
Right.
We need to know what Facebook's algorithm is doing to us, and Google's algorithm, how Google's algorithm is filtering the enormous flow of information. Why do we see the things we see when we search on Google? We need to be assured that this is free and fair, and it's not tilted so that Google benefits from it, right? We don't know. And unless we can know in real time at that moment, then it's useless.
Right.
I mean, imagine doing an antitrust case against Amazon, right? So you tell them you're after them for predatory pricing, which is actually something that they do. So that would be a fair thing to go for. So you go for them for that, and you say, right, well, we need to see your documents. And they look at you and they say, okay, well, we'll print out 10 million documents related to pricing and we'll give them to you. That would be accurate. And that would only be part of their business. So now you have 10 million documents to look through, and it takes you a while, and then you do more discovery, and eventually 8 years or so from now, you're in court. And Amazon looks at you and say, what predatory pricing? We stopped doing that 5 years ago.
Right.
Amazon made 10 billion pricing changes over the Christmas holiday, right?
Wow.
How can you be trying to track that in a sort of post hoc kind of way after the event to look if it doesn't work? You have to be in there looking in much closer to real time. And that in turn requires specialized people, because the 200 lawyers in charge of antitrust at the Department of Justice cannot do this. They're not technically capable. They don't have the resources. So you need a new entity to do this. Now, I think Amazon should pay for it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that figuring out how to cope with these kind of intensely data-driven, massive amount of data companies will be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, either we figure it out or we just throw up our hands and say, okay, go do what you want.
I don't think that's likely to happen. There's always going to be somebody who pushes back. But, it's interesting because on the one hand, right, all of this focuses on Amazon being customer obsessed and trying to get the lowest price, right, which was the initial objective for their customers. and which is why, as you pointed out, they're not likely to lose an antitrust suit, because antitrust is usually about aggregating and driving prices up, as opposed to what they're doing, which is actually driving
That's
prices
right.
down. So if you look at it, on the one hand, they have this vast amount of consumers who they're serving with low prices, but at the same time, they employ a vast amount of people in the same country that they're selling to. And those people have downward pressure on wages, although Amazon just raised their minimum wage, but still the overall wages are not high. There's aggressive negotiation, as you pointed out, and often done secretively for tax holidays and concessions in cities that take away valuable tax dollars that are needed to run these cities. You have what's allegedly grueling working conditions in warehouses. We don't know that. I certainly couldn't say that.
I can tell you because I've been there. And
Oh.
And actually, I have to say this. I say this to everybody who has Amazon, that the visit to the warehouse, you can go to visit the warehouses. And admittedly, it's a bit PR-ish, but I thought it was so remarkable. William Gibson said something that I've always thought was really important. He said, the future is all around us. It's just unevenly distributed.
Oh, that's interesting.
And in those warehouses, I mean, look, they pay well, they have benefits, but I watch them work. They're working at a station where they stand, they don't sit. There's no sitting, there's no talking, there's no cell phones, there's no music. And they are placing items off a conveyor belt into stacks of cubbies, basically, right? And they're doing this.
Right.
They're bending, they're moving. I mean, it's a physically demanding job. And in front of them is a screen which counts the number of seconds since the last completed action. And they have to do that combination of actions every 12 seconds for 10 hours, plus mandatory overtime.
Oh, my God.
So for weeks, you can be working 11 and a half hours, not 10 hours. That's very demanding. That's pushing the limits, right? And
yeah, that's tough.
Amazon releases no data about worker turnover, but in the book, I explain why I think that their worker turnover is 100% or more. These are tough jobs.
Right.
There are tough jobs all over the manufacturing sector and the retail sector. It's only that Amazon is so relentless about extracting the very last drop of sweat out of its workers.
As you pointed out in Behemoth, overall e-commerce is growing year on year at 2.4%, which is good news for Amazon, of course. But there's also a growing number of more serious competitors, right? Walmart has definitely raised the bar on what it's doing, Target. Everyone now is all of a sudden, maybe the pandemic was certainly a motivator, but even before that, I think a lot more people who had the clout were getting in there and expanding their e-commerce footprint. You point to three possible future scenarios for Amazon, which is continued growth, flat growth, or a decline as other competitors start to take market share. What do you feel is the most likely of the scenarios from a 2021 point of view?
I sort of break it out into two dimensions, if you like. There's the question of whether e-commerce itself is going to keep growing, and that seems obviously true. It was a huge boost from the pandemic. I think some of that boost will remain, and more stuff is going online. There's not really any doubt there. So Amazon will ride that particular wave. Your second question, your question though, really focused on the second part, which is what about competitors?
Right.
So let's start with the core of what I call Amazon's customer superglue, Prime.
Right.
Prime is unique because it offers benefits beyond retail.
Yes.
Right? It has a lot of great benefits inside retail, Prime days and all of that stuff, and fast shipping, free returns, etc. But outside retail, it has its entertainment industry and its gaming industry, right? Bezos said Amazon is the only company that figured out how to use Golden Globes to sell sneakers. And there's truth to that. People use that. So I would turn the question around in a certain sense. There are now 120 million households in the US that have Prime. That's out of 125 million. I take that back. There are 120 million members. There are 125 million households. Most people have Prime. And most people who have money have Prime. In particular. Now, is there anything that you can see on the horizon that would suggest that those customers are going to abandon Prime?
Well, I think the question that I would have isn't that they're going to abandon Prime. I mean, I have Prime myself and have had it for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I like it for the free shipping. They had me at the free shipping.
Right.
But, you see now that, for example, Walmart has added on Walmart Plus. Would you not buy one or maybe two other memberships? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. I think that ship has sailed. And I think we're already seeing early returns from Walmart Plus, which is showing that it's not gaining ground significantly, not fast. And it's more targeted, I think, and sort of like curbside pickup is targeted to retaining the customers Walmart has. They can build a pretty decent Walmart Plus for their own customers, for the people who are loyal to Walmart. And really, it's a defensive mode. It's not an aggressive attack on Amazon. And similarly with Target, Target announced that they have a marketplace now, and they have 500 businesses on their marketplace. Amazon has 6 million businesses on its marketplace. This is not, it's microscopic. It's not a, So do I think that there will be a serious competitor to Prime? No. If there is no serious competitor to Prime, will we see a change in consumer behavior? Right now, about 50% of all product searches start on Amazon.
Right. Yeah. Interesting, right?
Will that change? I don't think so. I don't think Google has managed to figure this out at all. Its market share of searches has declined sharply. Will people go to Walmart to look? Well, no, because all that huge catalog is over at Amazon, and that's where all the reviews are. Reviews matter. Reviews drive things.
Yes, absolutely.
That's an asset in the bank for Amazon. They get 10 million reviews a day on their platform.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Who knew that people would love to write reviews?
And they do.
And they do. They do. And they matter, right? I check
And
them.
people like to read reviews. I read them too.
Exactly. So does it look to me, and then there's Shopify. Well, Shopify is what one might expect when all of the legacy retailers panic and realize that they have to be online in a significant way. Shopify is much better for retailers than Amazon. There's no doubt. But Shopify has two things that disqualify it as a competitor. One, it has no customers of its own, right? It's a facilitating technology that lets bricks and mortar retailers reach their customers efficiently. That's great.
Right. Yes.
Terrific.
Yeah.
But you don't go to Shopify. I mean, it's not like joining Shopify gets you access to customers. It doesn't. They haven't managed to aggregate that. And second, it doesn't have a significant shipping solution. Right? It doesn't have the logistics. It uses FedEx and other people, and they're trying, but it's not competitive.
Right. It's not like what Amazon has.
No, it's not like what Amazon has. So for a legacy retailer trying to reach loyal customers, it's great. That's what it's for, I think. I don't think it's a competitor to Amazon, actually, at all. So 10 years from now, do I think Amazon will still dominate? Yes, I do. I don't. In the U.S., its business elsewhere is much more challenging. So, and it can lose money. It can screw it up. How could it screw it up? It could.
Yeah, doesn't sound like it can.
It's very hard, but it could lose the trust of customers.
Yes, you mentioned that trust was a key thing, and I thought, in a sense, you're right about that. It's not something you think of, but how could they lose that trust, do you think?
So let's imagine that they don't solve their red ink problem, right? That for some reason they decide that they're going to still sell this huge range of goods, and they're going to do much what they do now, and so they're going to keep losing money. I think in 2020, they lost more than 40 billion in retail. That's an
Really?
enormous number. And so what would they do? Well, they try and squeeze and cut corners, right? So they make it a little bit more difficult to return things, or they would add more advertising. I think that ads have become highly intrusive. You know, when you search for something on Amazon now, the first 2 rows are stuffed with ads. They're not search results at all. It's becoming a broadsheet. And if it do more and more of that to squeeze more and more revenues out, customers will become disillusioned. They could also become disillusioned if fake reviews become more of a problem. They've become quite a significant problem.
That's true.
So if you can't trust what you see, I think opening the door to so many sellers from different cultures is a risk.
A very good point, yes.
They did it for a reason, and one understands it, but cultures differ in how you deal with customers.
Well, also, when you have a platform, you don't have anybody who's doing any quality assurance on the products, whereas when you buy at Walmart, it's gone through an entire chain of people who have to meet compliance. There's no one going direct from factory.
Right. And there's, problems with counterfeits, and, so your point about quality is really there. And then there's a sort of broader trust thing. I mean, this relentless stream of negative stories about how they treat people cannot be good. They're big enough now that they can't really afford to completely ignore the wider world. It will impinge.
Right.
So it's all around trust, consumer trust. If they keep that, I don't think anything will stop them.
I think that's interesting. So it really comes down to maintaining that consumer trust.
Yeah, and they are either the most or the second most trusted company in America. So they have plenty in the bank.
Right. We talked a little bit about other markets, and I think that that's a very good point, because Amazon has certainly grown vastly in its home market in the U.S., and I'm sure there's room for further growth, but maybe not as much growth in terms of retail, because it's achieved so much. It already has so much of the market share. In your opinion, how do you see emerging markets in terms of how critical do you think will winning in emerging markets be for Amazon?
Well, I think it's fairly clear that they have ambitions beyond retail. So as their other businesses grow, retail overall will become less important to Amazon. But it's still the dog, it's not the tail.
Right.
And it's interesting because I talked to people at AWS, at the internet services place, and they think they're the dog. But they're actually just part of the tail. They're not nearly as important as they think they are. And international is really interesting. So Amazon got into certain markets early and very successfully: the UK, France, Germany, and to some degree Spain.
Right.
It got in there first, and it was very successful. Where it's not first, it's much more questionable. So there are 3 places to look. I mean, there should be more, but I look at 3. China, they're out. They've left.
Right, yeah.
Eastern Europe and the smaller European countries, they are working on quite hard. And Poland will be a particular case to watch, because they were not first.
Interesting.
They just opened a Polish store, a Polish version of Amazon. And there is an existing dominant e-commerce player that's quite well liked. So the question is Amazon strong enough to overcome a well-placed, domestic-based competitor? Can they do that? And we'll see. I don't know. I suspect the answer is maybe not. Partly because delivery is so different in Europe. In parts of Europe, you're not allowed to just leave a package on the door. You have to actually connect to the person. That completely changes how you do delivery. You have to do it more through lockers. The big place to look at, of course, is India.
Right. Yeah. Then they made a big investment there.
They made a big investment. Well, yeah. The question is, what is big to Amazon now, right?
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
$5 or $6 billion. Well, no. I mean, they bought Whole Foods for $13 billion, and that seems to have been more of an opportunist move than anything else. So In India, they face problems because India has elected a pretty nationalist government. They're about to enact more controls on foreign investment, especially in digital areas. It's going to be quite a hostile environment for Amazon. So Amazon may be the most successful of the foreign companies, but it's going to take a long time, and it's going to be quite a grind. I think it's going to be very difficult, and I don't think they're necessarily going to be making much money in any of these markets. It's just it's an entirely different and huge market, and I don't think anybody knows how that's going to turn out. Walmart's there too. They bought Flipkart. I mean, it's challenging. Does it really matter to Amazon? No. It's a huge growth market. It may work.
Yeah.
It may not. If it doesn't, does it affect their core business? Not at all. Yeah, they could be very successful in the U.S. and very successful getting into new markets and have AWS grow. They're fine.
Right. So there isn't the pressure to get into these markets. It's a take it or leave it kind of a thing.
Well, they have their own internal cultural need to grow fast. They've been growing at 25% a year for forever or more. That's an unbelievable thing for huge companies, right? I mean, and the stress of trying to keep that going must be intense. This is revenues, not profits. So
right.
I mean, if they want to keep this going, they have to find almost $100 billion in new revenue this year.
Wow.
This is nuts. I mean, it's not, where do you get that? The whole grocery business is only $600 billion.
Really?
Right. So, this is not, it's not reasonable to expect that they will continue to grow, but there is at that speed. But there is.
Right, at that speed, yeah.
But there is pressure inside. There's no pressure from Wall Street, I don't think.
No, not really.
Well, Bezos still
Doesn't
owns
seem so.
most of the stock. He owns 17% or something, and all of the next 6 biggest shareholders are passive investment funds like BlackRock and Vanguard. So they're going to have Amazon come what may, and they don't have much interest in what Amazon actually does. They own it because it's part of the market. They own part of the market. So Amazon isn't under pressure from Wall Street. The only place that pressure could really come is if their stock starts to decline. What happens? They don't really care about Wall Street, but they care about their best employees, and they pay their best employees to a considerable extent in stock. So if the stock is not moving up, I mean, it's had a great ride, but, as in most things these days, it's what have you done for me lately? If the stock goes down next year and all of those stock options are underwater, Amazon will start losing talent, and that could hurt. So maybe that's the real way that the market disciplines Amazon.
So despite all their massive technology, they still need people.
They do still need people. They especially will need white-collar people.
One last question. In your opinion, how should other companies position themselves, or what actions could they be taking to survive or to thrive in a market where clearly Amazon's massive scale gives it huge competitive advantages and where it looks like Amazon is going to be around for a while?
Yeah. The key is customers, isn't it? Everything revolves around customers and finding ways to differentiate what you do for your customers. The strength of Amazon is scale and scope, right? But what it does not have, and what it will never really have, is deep expertise in market segments. So I recently wrote a piece about a competing platform that is emerging, serving the needs of construction equipment operators, right? All the parts and pieces.
Right, yes.
Right? And Amazon is in that business, but basically it's in it as a commodity. They don't really know the places where you can know your business and acquire customers who value your expertise, that's a place where you can really push Amazon aside. I think, for example, that Amazon's foray into high fashion, it strikes me as basically ludicrous. I cannot imagine how Amazon is going to get into high fashion, but they're trying to. It just seems absurd to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you're saying, it's where that free shipping matters or doesn't matter.
Right. So you need, and that's a good point too, that if you can find customers and markets where free shipping is less important and where expertise is more important, where you can find ways to do that, then I think you can compete pretty well with Amazon. But you really, really have to connect with your customers. I know that's boring, corporate speak to say that, but now you cannot afford to take them for granted in any way.
That's so true.
Find your niche, even if it's a big niche. I mean, look, Nike is trying to do this. It doesn't have to be small. Nike has decided that they will not play with Amazon, that they're going to go direct to consumer. And it's an incredibly risky strategy for them because, after all, they only touch the consumer once a year when they buy sneakers.
Right.
I mean, maybe they can persuade them to come in twice a year or 3 times a year, whereas Amazon touches you every day.
Yeah, it's true.
You have to find things where your consumer, you and me, will value going to Nike because they are somehow doing something different for us.
I think you're right. It's a matter of any product that isn't 100% price driven. Free shipping being part of price.
That's right. You have to find ways to move, if you possibly can, to move away from the center of the market, the mass part of the market, because I think Amazon is very tough there. And if Amazon isn't tough, the sellers on its platform are even tougher.
Right.
And the other thing to think about is that Amazon is really the anti-brand. Look, you go onto Amazon and you search for a product. You don't search for a brand.
True.
If you want to create a brand, you have to find a way to go around Amazon.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it really points to the importance of building a brand that has true brand values, as opposed to something that's more commoditized.
Well, both the importance and the difficulty.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Because
for sure.
You somehow have to make those customers connect direct to you. You can't go through the platform because you won't own the customer.
True. That's a very good point. Dr. Gaster, thank you so much. Really, this has been so interesting. I've learned a tremendous amount, even more than I learned by reading the book. I think if anybody really wants to understand what's happening in e-commerce and understand what's happening with Amazon, this is the book. This lays it all out, and it's actually enjoyable to read, despite the fact that it's packed with information. It's a fast read. So I think it's great, and I suppose I'm laughing bringing this up, but you can buy it on Amazon.
Of course you can, right? And it's a tough thing. My friends who want to buy it through bookshop.org, who can do that,
right?
And it takes 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh!
Right, and Amazon have it there in 2 days, or instantly if you're reading it on a Kindle. So
that's right. So it just brings us full circle back to where we started, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, this has been a very nice conversation. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yeah, myself also. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
No problem. Delighted.
If you enjoyed this episode of A Seat at the Table, join me each week when I sit down with leading executives, entrepreneurs, educators, and innovators who share their insights, experiences, and future vision for business. And make sure to visit Spin Expo. From trend information to technical innovation, Spin Expo is the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. The fair provides well-edited forums featuring high-quality products that are bursting with creativity. To learn more, go to spinexpo.com. That's spinexpo.com. You can also find a link in the show notes for this episode. Before you go, if you're looking for clear and precise insights into global supply chains, check out Current Situation and Sourcing Reports. Find out more in the show notes. And don't forget to stop by our new podcast website, where you can find all the previous episodes of A Seat at the Table podcast, the show notes, plus lots of other useful information. You can find it at www.seat.fm. That's www.seat.fm. FM because it's a podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.